Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Denver Police Chief Ron Thomas. I'm joined here today by Councilman Flynn, as well as Executive Director Armando Soldate, Director of Parks and Recreation Happy Haynes, Mike Mills from Crime Stoppers, as well as District 4 Commander Brad Qualley and Major Crimes Division Commander Matt Clark. We're all here to announce that we have made an arrest in connection with the murder of a 14-year-old boy that occurred here about 8 weeks ago. Very tragic situation. Always a tragedy when someone loses their life. Particularly tragic when the perpetrator and the victim are youth. Even more impactful when it occurs, in a place like a rec center, which is the backdrop here. A place where people want to bring their kids for safe and healthy activities. I really want to highlight the partnership with our community. They were very integral in us coming to a conclusion and making an arrest in this case. Again, really want to highlight the tragedy and how impactful that is. And I am committed to continuing to work with Councilman Flynn, as well as our many other city partners, to really create a safe community here in Denver. So with that, I will turn it over to Commander Clark for some details.
Thank you, Chief. I'm Commander Matt Clark, CLARK, Commander of the Denver Police Department's Major Crimes Division. Thank you for being here today and giving us an opportunity to announce the arrest of the offender in relation to the case of the homicide involving 14-year-old Josiah JoJo Aragon. This has been a lengthy and extensive investigation that was conducted by members of the Denver Police Department Homicide Unit with assistance from the Denver Crime Lab to get us to this point today. And while we announced the arrest of the offender, we also recognize the grief and trauma that the Aragon family still continues to process with the loss of JoJo. Members of the investigative team, members of our victim services unit continue to provide support for the Aragon family, and will do so as we move into this next prosecution phase. I'd like to provide a brief overview of the incident and provide additional context as to what we've learned through the investigation. Please understand that the offender in this case is a juvenile, so I am actually specifically limited in some of the information I can provide. Specifically, I will not be identifying the individual. I cannot provide a booking photo, and the affidavit that was drafted in support of his arrest is not eligible for release at this point. With that in mind, I'll provide a little bit of context, and then once we conclude the statements, we'll take some questions as we're able to. On August 8th, around 3 o'clock, just in the area behind us here, Denver police officers were called to a report of an individual that was down on the ground that appeared to have been assaulted there. The arriving officers located JoJo there, who had signs of significant trauma. JoJo was ultimately pronounced deceased at the scene. As a result of that, a homicide investigation was initiated. The Denver officer of the medical examiner's office concluded that, they completed an autopsy and determined that the cause of death was multiple sharp force injuries as well as a gunshot wound, and the manner of death was determined to be a homicide. Over the past 7 weeks, the investigators from the homicide unit have been working diligently, following leads, analyzing evidence, talking to neighbors, and triaging tips that came in, which ultimately led to the identification of a juvenile offender. The members of the homicide team submitted an affidavit in support of an arrest warrant. That warrant was approved yesterday by a judge, and the juvenile offender was taken into custody in Southwest Denver without incident last evening. I want to thank members of the Southwest Denver community who assisted and provided critical information to the investigators in the early stages of the investigation. I also want to acknowledge and thank Crime Stoppers, our partner in Crime Stoppers, for the work that they did. A Crime Stoppers bulletin was released shortly after the incident occurred, and we received over a dozen tips which were useful to investigators as they worked through and identified the juvenile offender. To provide context in regards to the incident, I can tell you that the investigators determined that the victim and the offender did know each other. They attended school together the year prior, last year. Throughout the summer, it appears that the two were having conversations back and forth about the sale of a firearm. One individual was going to sell a firearm to another individual. That transaction occurred on August 8th in the park behind us, near the Southwest Rec Center. And during that transaction, the suspect violently assaulted the victim and ultimately killed him and robbed him. This was not a random encounter. This was not a chance encounter. It was a planned meeting that ended tragically. The juvenile offender is currently being held for first-degree murder, aggravated robbery, tampering with physical evidence in a felony crime, and possession of a handgun by a juvenile offender. As I wrap up, I just want to again thank the community, the family, the Aragon family, for their patience throughout this investigation. 7 weeks is a long time to wait for answers, but the investigators who were responsible for this investigation did not stop at any point. There was significant resources devoted to this, as we do every homicide investigation, to resolve that case, identify and hold the offender accountable. The Denver District Attorney's Office will ultimately determine what charges will be filed and if or whether the juvenile will be charged as an adult. With that, I would like to I'd like to introduce Mike Mills, the Executive Director of Crime Stoppers, who's a strong partner for the Denver Police Department and other metro agencies.
Thank you all for being here. I want to thank the community, the Denver Police, and our law enforcement partners. I especially want to thank our coordinator, Detective Sherry Duran, for the hard work that she puts in to get the information to law enforcement and to our board of directors. Without this partnership and the trust of the community, our organization would not be viable and credible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kevin Flynn, give him an opportunity to say a few words about the community that he represents.
Thank you, Chief. I know that you're here to ask questions. I won't hold you up much longer. I used to do what you do, and when I was a night cops reporter at the Rocky Mountain News, I got to know that the Denver Police Department's homicide unit was top-notch from the 80s and the 90s, and I think today is no exception. They work tirelessly, but they also require help from the community, many of whose members are here today. Because when this happened, this community came together. It's no lie when the chief says that the community really produced information that was helpful. A short time after JoJo was killed in this building here, we held a meeting on short notice, and 140 of our neighbors turned out to hear more about it and to interact with the chief, with Commander Qualley from District 4, with Matt Clark, and with the other folks who were here from DPD. We really pulled together. It's just heartbreaking what happened here. Heartbreaking for us, heartbreaking for the Aragon family. And I can only hope that what happened last night with this arrest will help the Aragon family to bear what is unbearable, and that's the loss of their child. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'd like to bring up another strong city partner of ours, Director Happy Haynes.
Thank you, Chief, and for all of you for being here. I first want to extend again my condolences to the Aragon family. As Councilman Flynn said, it's the most unbearable thing we can imagine, and our hearts go out to them. I want to acknowledge Justin Smith, a supervisor of this recreation center, who works closely with this community and works hard to create safe spaces for young people and all of the members of this community. Fran Coleman, who chairs our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We really value the partnership that we have with Denver Police Department and are so pleased that what is happening here today represents the fact that it takes partnership between the community and law enforcement and between all of us to make our communities safe. We will be coordinating with the councilman and with the police department to continue to find ways to make this facility a safe one and a safer one. And again, my heart is breaking and goes out to the family. We must do everything we can to take guns out of the hands of children, and continue to be to watch out for one another, to be good members of the community, and work in partnership with our police department, with our Denver Parks and Recreation, and all of the agencies who try to make our communities wonderful places to live. So again, thank you for being out here, and again, thank you to the community.
Thank you, Director Haynes. That concludes the presentation portion of our briefing. I can answer questions at this time.
Chief,
yes.
Is there a reason to believe that there may be more suspects involved or suspects or persons of interest that police are still trying to get a hold of, or any reason to believe there were more people here on the night of that incident?
I don't believe so, but I'll defer to Commander Clark to answer that more thoroughly.
The question was, do we believe there's anybody else responsible or outstanding in this case? At this point, we believe the offender that we have in custody is responsible for JoJo's death. We are looking at the possibility of that other people possibly were involved, but at this point, there's not evidence to support that. If anybody has any information or evidence to support that, we'd ask that they call Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous, and we can provide that information to our investigators.
Are you able to differentiate between who was buying and selling this firearm?
We do know that, but that's not something we're going to release at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if the gun being sold in the transaction was the one used in the crime?
That's also something I'm not able to disclose at this point.
I'm not sure if you'd be able to speak to this, but it was just mentioned about perhaps safety improvements being made to the area surrounding this particular center here. Have there been steps taken?
So we are working with our partners with Denver Parks and Rec to create some additional safety enhancements. There are safety enhancements that have been added to this rec center over time, and there's certainly a process to enhance the safety around all of our rec centers, and this is in line with that.
You mentioned the family. Do they have a message at all for the public on this particular day? I know that we're all hearing everything, so I just wanted to see if there was...
So we did have an investigator reach out directly with them and have a conversation. I won't share the details of that conversation.
Commander, Chief, you talked about community a lot, and there's a lot of members of the community here, and you gave credit to them for, getting you guys closer.
Absolutely, I think we did that. And I'll say that again. Very thankful for members of the community that helped us. Thankful to the members of the community. I see a number of folks that were here the day that we all kind of got together to really talk about the healing process relative to this heinous crime, and so certainly thankful once again to their continued support.
That's great, Chief. I wonder, can you elaborate on what information was provided by the community in order for y'all to get some sort of resolution in this case?
I'm not going to do that at this time. That's going to be part of our investigation. No.
Not going to happen, all right?
Councilmember Flynn, do you have another reason for what may have compelled you to come out here and make a statement today? I know that you mentioned that you had been in meetings and everything here.
Repeat the first part.
What compelled you to come out here today specifically with this as well? I know that
This is probably the most terrible crime that's ever occurred in this neighborhood. I live 2 blocks up the street. We got 140 of our neighbors to fill that gym about a month ago, shortly after the crime. This is just a terrible, terrible event that needed to be addressed. And it's the heart of my community. And we've had enough of it. And what the chief said is correct, or what Matt said is correct. Who said? Whoever said it. Guns in the hands of children produce terrible results. And we simply have to address youth gun violence in this city. We're looking at the 2023 budget right now, and there is funding in there that addresses that, and we'll be looking at it very closely. I'm going to wonder now if it's enough. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for being